Her dream was to write her first book. Nervous about it, she put it off so long until she had no other excuses other than to write it. What happened with that book is astonishing, as it became a favorite among all of the readers who lined up to read it. Join me as I talk to the incredible Sara J. Rader on this episode of True Crime and Authors.
Welcome to True Crime and Authors Podcast, where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction. Here's your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to True Crime and Authors. Of course, I'm your man, David McClam. Hey, if you guys haven't already, make sure you follow us on all of our social media outlets so you don't miss anything that is coming up. You can find those in the show's description on this podcast. All right, so if you're taking a look at your calendar, you know that today is Author Day, and I do have one for you today. She is the mother to 3 and the stepmom to 4 kids. She is a nurse by trade, but she finally written and published her independent book as an author. And she is a Pennsylvanian, and she's born and raised there. Let's give it up today for Sara J. Rader. Well, let's kind of dive in. So is there anything that we don't know about you? We know that you just wrote your new book, which I didn't mention. So let's throw that out there. You are the author of Haunted Hearts, Book 1, Always Haunt Me, Duet 1. So what made you sit down, finally write and publish this book?
Well, a couple of things. My husband's kind of been bugging me for years because he knew that that was a dream of mine. So he's kind of been bugging me to sit down and finally do it. And then a few people already know this, but my older sister died it'll be 2 years ago in October. She was only 39 years old. So that really affected me. And it made me just very aware of how little time we have, and that really there's no point in wasting or waiting for something. If you want to do it, do it. And that really motivated me to finally get it done.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I do know where you're coming from. I lost my mother in September of 2020, and it never gets any easier, especially when people in our lives passes away that we, even though we know it's not feasible, or maybe in your case it may be, but in my mom's, that she would outlive me. You just don't ever expect them to go. Right. And when they do, it seems like we get kind of a kick in life. So after that happened, I knew you dedicated the book to her. Was any of the book about her or anything like that?
A couple of people actually asked me about that. And then I think it might tie in a later question, but Sally's personality and her sense of humor and how she kind of comes at things, that was very much Beth. That was like, but it's just kind of how it went. And as I was going, I was like, oh my gosh, she reminds me so much of Beth. I wrote my sister into a book. So a lot of, not all of Sally, but most is inspired by her.
So Della is the main character in this book. It turns out that she has a big secret. She has the gift of third sight, communication with the dead. Because of that, labeled an outcast. So that brings me to the question of, were you concerned of the stigmas that some people may have writing about those type of things? Some people don't believe in magic or things of that nature. Did you have any of those concerns when you wrote the book?
Actually, honestly, as I was writing it, I thought, this is such a cliched idea in the world we're living in now. Even like 20 years ago when I was a kid, more and more people are open to that sort of thing. You'd be surprised. I mean, if you stop people on the street, most of them would say, oh yeah, I believe in ghosts. I believe in psychics. I believe in mediums. Like, it's more accepted now than I think ever. And I thought, well, this is so cliche. This has been written about, like nobody, but everybody really dug it. And I was like, cool. Like we can, and especially I think with the background of where she grew up and that small town, small America mentality where people are more closed-minded, I think it fit. If she were growing up in a different area, I don't think it would make sense, if that makes any sense at all.
Well, I'll tell you off the bat, I am a Christian, and I know that there's a lot of people that say you shouldn't believe in that kind of stuff, but it isn't all evil either. And I'll be the first one to tell you that I do believe that there's ghosts in my house. I believe that my mother-in-law, who actually passed away here, she has moved things before. I kid you not. My mom, certain things has happened since she's passed away. It doesn't always have to be an evil thing. And I do believe that sometimes we have loved ones when they pass, they do look after us. And we are able to feel that presence. So I'm glad that you've taken that leap to write about that, because over the years, as you said, so many people has been stigmatized, people has been killed because of it, people has been jailed. So it's time that we just get out of that. So that brings to the next question. Do you believe in the actual powers that you wrote in the book?
And that was something I grew up. In fact, that was my first love, and that ghost stories. I just love ghost stories, and I love the idea of it. I mean, I've had some experiences, especially in my younger years as a child, where I've seen ghosts. So I wholeheartedly believe that. I really do. I've had, like I said, experiences with it. And of course, I love to read about it. And that's kind of where all that came from. It's what I love most. In this whole journey, everyone's always said, you write about what you love, or you write about what you know. And that seems to come easiest. And it truly did. It really did for me.
Do you find any of yourself in any of the characters in this book?
I don't think I do. I don't know. Maybe there is. I mean, I'm through the whole book. I mean, like there's a little bit of me on a page, just maybe not, I don't know, not blatantly.
So I've talked to a few authors now, and I've asked this question because it's always different and it's interesting. I've heard 11 years. I've heard down to 5 years. How long did this book live in your brain? How long did the characters take a residence? Is it something you always thought about, or it just popped up in your head one day?
The basis for the book, the idea of this haunted house on this hill, you know, with the willow trees surrounding it, that idea has been in my head since I was 14. And I've always just tell a ghost story about this house on a hill. I want willows in it. I knew that much. It is initially my first story in my head was the main character was a man instead of a woman. And this story was being told solely from his point of view. And I flipped that idea just like in the last few years when I've really been dwelling on it more. And I've kind of changed a few things about it. And a lot of things have grown and morphed, but straight out the gates, it's still the same basis. It's the same story that I've dreamt about and thought of and pondered for, like I said, oh my gosh, almost 20 years now.
So I have to mention this because I noticed in the book, and you did put this in synopsis too, that the mansion is left in California, which is where I happen to live. So how did you come up with California out of everywhere?
Where the gentleman characters came from?
Yes.
Honestly, I wanted to make it as far from PA as you could possibly get. I wanted it to be a different, you know what I mean? I wanted those two sets of characters to be separated, not just, you know, emotionally and in their backgrounds and things, but just like in their geographics, because that can really change stuff. Like this book, I really learned some interesting things about California that honest to God, I didn't know. And unless you're from California, you wouldn't know that. And it just shows that even within our country and from state to state, there is a cultural difference. If you cross over a state line, it could be completely different.
So I don't want to take up all the time because I'm sure you have a couple of fans out here that actually sent in a lot of questions. Yeah. And these are things they said that they wanted to know. So we're going to try our best to answer them. And I'll give them to you one at a time.
Okay.
And tell you when they come from the same person. So the first one comes from Books and Music Nerd 312. The question there is, where did you come up with the idea for the series?
I started writing it, and it was all about Della and Diedrich. And literally, initially, when I first started writing it, it was going to be solely from Della's point of view. Diedrich wasn't going to have his side, so you know, his version to be told. And it was just going to be the one book. Now, as I was going and I was writing and I was getting deeper into it, and the characters started doing things that I had no plan on them doing, like things started to happen. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to resolve everything in just one book. And then, like I said, I got about halfway through and I almost wrote half the book before I started putting Diedrich into it. And I thought, we've got to tell the story from his side. He's got to have a say in this. And I think it really enhanced everything. But yeah, initially there was not supposed to be two books. There wasn't supposed to be two point of views. And it all just kind of took on a life of its own. So that it was kind of an accident, I guess.
Well, I mean, isn't that what usually happens, though? You never intend for one thing to happen and then it blows up to something totally different.
Right.
So I hope for Bix and Music Nerd 312, that's the answer that they're looking for. So your next few comes from T Reading in Oz. So the first question they had was, how different is the finalized book from your original idea or when you first thought of the story?
Initially, it was that house on the hill. And it was Della's character. She was definitely set not to be as important as she was. She was supposed to be a side character. She became the main character. And then Diedrich became the side character. And like, it just took on a whole, like, I'm serious. It just went in its own direction completely. But in the end, the bare bones of it, the framework, exactly what I started with. It just, like you said, it just branched off into different directions and became like a whole big monster.
So since that wasn't intentional, if you could, would you go back and dial it back into what you originally wanted to be, or would you leave it as it is now?
I'm really happy. I'm really proud of where it went and where the characters went. Like I said, I never dreamed in a million years. If you'd asked me years and that this would happen, I would finish it and it would be what it is, I would have never believed you. So no, I wouldn't change a thing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Their second question is there any chance of having Della help others besides the boys after book 2, or is her story done?
Right. I never thought about writing more than the 2 books. I never thought about giving Della more of a story of her own. I'm not canceling that out. It's something that could be doable in the future. I'm just not really focusing on it right now.
So if you want my feedback on that, I do. I mean, just to give you some food for thought, I think Della is a strong enough character that she could carry this series as long as you want it to go. So just from another fan of this, about Della, I think she's strong enough that if your imagination goes there, you can stretch this out forever with her.
Thank you, David.
All right. So again, they want to know what songs would be on a soundtrack or playlist for the book. She says, I have no idea if you already had a playlist and I didn't remember, but really want to know.
There is actually a playlist in the front of the book, which I reminded her of that, and she apologized. But yeah, there's a playlist, and there were songs that were popping up in my head. And I'm big on having music going in the background. So I had my earbuds, like every time pretty much I was sitting down writing, I had music going. And there's definitely mood music that went along with it.
Well, when she asked that question, I had to go second guess myself because I was like, isn't that one of the first pages in the book? So I had to go back I'm like, did I miss that? And I'm like, no, there's a playlist here. But sometimes, we get so excited, we either don't remember or,
Yeah, most people
the story is so enthralled. Right. All right, and then she wants to know, did anyone you know in real life inspire you to make the characters act a certain way or have a certain personality?
No certain character was specifically designed after a real life person. But there are, like I said before, there are little bits of pretty much anyone, most of my very close loved ones, and some people that have really affected me throughout my life are sprinkled throughout each of the characters. And I tried to keep a little tidbit, and like you said, whether it be like a character trait or a personality trait or the way they talk or their mannerisms to what they do for a living or, their hobbies and what they like to do in their spare time. There's a little bit of everybody I love in there, and I'm not going to name names, but if anyone has read it, they could probably pick themselves out or pick someone else out in it.
All right, so the next set comes from Alex L. Criddle. First question is, what is your writing process?
I don't have one. I'm sorry, it's not more glamorous than that. But I literally I sit down and I start writing, and whatever comes, comes. And sometimes it comes real easy, real fast, and sometimes it's very slow and painstaking. But I mean, I don't really plot. I don't plot at all. I mean, I might, as I go, make little notes for myself. I have a whiteboard here on the wall. You can't see it, but I have like a whiteboard, which a friend of mine, Terrence, who's also an indie author on Bookstagram, he gave me that idea. But I keep track of some of my major plot twists and minor details that way. But that's pretty much the only organization I do. It's completely winging it.
Here at True Crime and Authors, I read a lot of books. Every author that you've heard me interview and everyone that you will hear me interview, I've either read one of their books or I'm in the process of reading one. So how do I keep up with all of the books that I read? Well, that is where the show's sponsor, Catch Creations 614, comes into play. Catch Creations makes digital handmade planners and journals, and for those who want something on paper, printables as well. She can make anything from My Little Pony to Black Panther, anything that you can creatively think of, Catch Creations 614 can get it done. With excellent customer service and excellent communication, the owner, Kristen, will make sure that your journal comes out right and perfect the first time. And for those who are listeners of this show, you will get a special 10% discount when you use the code TrueCrime10. Catch Creations, best handmade planners, journals, and printables in the business. Check it out now. Well, if you have no process, I couldn't tell from the way the book is written. So very good, very good. Who are some authors that inspire you?
Oh my gosh, I have a bunch. From my childhood, it would have to be R.L. Stine. I loved horror. That was my first love. Ghost stories and horror stories. I loved Betty Wren Wright, who's a very old author. She wrote ghost stories for like adolescents, and they were great. I loved, obviously, as I've gotten older, my tastes have changed and expanded, and I have other authors I can include in there, like J.T. Geisinger, Ella Fields, R.S. Gray, and they're all romance writers, but they write different genres of romance. They write fantasy romance. They write your regular run-of-the-mill romance. They write dark romance. So as you can see, this book kind of had a little bit of everything kind of rolled up into it.
All right, why did you go the self-publishing route? Now, this is also one of the questions I had too, so you get to answer both of us at the same time.
Well, it never even occurred to me, seriously. I was totally terrified of rejection, so I've never sent any of my work ever to any type of publisher or literary magazine or anything like that, just because I was afraid they'd throw it back in my face. And as most authors will tell you, especially if they're a part of a publishing company, they were turned down how many times before they were told, oh yeah, sure, we'll publish your stuff. And now in the last 10 years, Amazon has made it so easy to publish. And I just thought, you know what, I'll do it myself. Why involve somebody else that could reject me? I'll just do it myself and hopefully everybody likes it. And that's kind of how I got here.
So here's an extension of that question. Now that you have your first book out, a lot of people's reading it. If a big publishing house came to you and said, hey, we want to make you a deal, would you do that knowing that they may have restraints on your writing going forward, or would you choose to stay independent?
I guess that's something every author wants, is someone to say, hey, we'll pay to publish your book. I mean, that's, a dream come true. But like you said, there's a lot of control there that you lose. And I do think, especially now that I've done it, and I got to publish something that I'm really proud of and I really love, and I wouldn't change any part of it. I couldn't imagine someone telling me I had to alter any part of it. I think I'd have a real problem with that. So I might not.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, because I do know, just like dealing with music, sometimes artists have to give up certain control. And especially in a book, if you give that certain control up, it may change the whole entire story. And I know nobody would be happy with that. So good answer. Good answer.
Thank you.
All right. And the last question that Alex had is, can you tell us anything about Kane and Sally's story?
What I can say is that Kane and Sally's story is definitely going to be a little more adult than Della and Dietrich's were, just because the characters are very different. Della was Della. She's your kind of naive girl next door, still learning about life type character. In that whole story, it moved at her pace the way she needed it to. Now, Kane and Sally are obviously older. They have different experiences they're bringing to the table. So I think their story is going to be a little darker, a little edgier, more adult, and definitely steamier.
As you write Kane and Sally, knowing that in mind, is it in your mind that you may continue the book series and have like their own type of spinoff on that? Have you ever thought about that at all?
No, but I didn't think that the first book was going to go the way it did, and it completely was. So I'm not, canceling anything out. If it happens, it happens. We'll just see how it all comes down.
Fair enough. All right, so Books and Music Nerd 312 and Alex L. Criddle, we do thank you for taking the time to send in questions for Sara today. Did you enjoy answering those for your fans out there?
I did. They were great questions.
So I do know that when you say independent, you went completely independent. What I mean by that is there's some independent authors that actually has firms or other hosts that will send out or find them ARC readers. You have your own ARC team that you kind of assembled, and you sent the book individually to all of us. How did you go about selecting the readers that you wanted for ARC? In case anybody don't know what ARC is, it stands for Advanced Readers Copies. These are free books that authors will send out to you in exchange for a fair and honest review. So how did you go about picking your ARC team?
Well, I like you said, I do everything myself. So I made my own graphics. I basically did my own PR and marketing. I put it out there as a post on both Facebook and on Instagram. And I had a variety from both social medias reach out to me. And I got a very wide group of people, and I was really excited about that. Now, I didn't have a lot of applicants, so pretty much everybody that applied for the ARC got it because I only had, I think, like 22 or 23 people offer to do it. But like I said, I had people I know, I had people I didn't know, like you, David, and I've gotten to know new people. I've made new friends through this experience. And I've even had some family members that volunteered, and I let them in on it, and everybody did great. I'm really happy with the response. But yeah, at this point, there was really no picking or choosing. Everybody that applied got the copy. So,
well, I'll tell you, if you know anything about me or anything about Bookstagram, you're listed as ghost fiction. Usually is a book I wouldn't even look at because it's not in what I read. But the one thing that I said I wanted to start doing this year is reading more books. So let me tell you where I feel for people who don't read the genre you write, what snatched me in. Always a good synopsis. So it's got to be something in there that is intriguing enough to say, well, let me go ahead and give this book a try. I don't believe in taking ARCs from authors just because it's a free book, because it's something that you worked hard on. And if I can't objectively read it and give you good feedback to go forward, I'm not going to do it. But when I read the synopsis, I'm like, this sounds pretty interesting. So I have to see where this is going to go. And I'm glad that I did. So that begs this question. With the ARC team that you have, you've kind of created yourself your own little family. They rally behind you. If anybody's in this group that's listening to this, you know it's true. They rally behind you. They're always there to give you encouragement. We try our hardest to get reviews pushed out for you because that's what you as an independent author lives and dies by. Here's the question that puts you on the spot. Can we expect that we're going to be part of your ARC team going forward for anything else that you write in the future?
Absolutely. I'd already planned on asking everyone that participated if they would want to definitely especially be a part of book 2. Even by the questions they submitted, you're invested in it now. You're invested in Kane and Sally and the whole thing. And I definitely want all my ARC readers back. I love them. You guys have been great.
You should feel excellent because I ask this all the time. You know, I promote the author that's coming on the show at least 2 to 3 days before so I can gather questions. And the moment that I posted into the group and onto Bookstagram that you were coming, questions started flooding in the gate right there. So I hope this makes you feel good. You know that we are actually reading your book. People's really enjoying it and they're waiting for more.
Right.
So let's talk about this because it's very interesting. You're a mother of 3 and you're a stepmom of 4. So that's 7 children.
Yeah.
So congratulations, you got one more than me. I have 6.
Thank you.
And you're also a nurse. How do you find time? I've already met your husband. So how do you find time to take care of your family, be a nurse, and also sit down to write?
A lot of late nights. I didn't sit down to the computer a lot of nights till after 9 o'clock. We both have 50-50 custody with our exes, so that we get all of the kids one week. And then the next week, we just have the littlest one, ours together. Well, he's 3. I just give him, something to do and grab my laptop and he'll chill near me and play near me while I'm writing. So I did a lot of writing on the off weeks when I wasn't running kids to, basketball practice or softball practice or all the millions of other things they're doing on top of working 40 hours a week. But yeah, it was definitely a labor of love, and a lot of my personal time that should have been downtime for me, I spent on the book.
Now, I have, seen and met your husband. I know he plays your tech guy. He's the man you go to. He seems very supportive. Was he very supportive in the writing of this book for you?
Oh my gosh, yes. And God love him. He's been telling me for 4 years, you need to write this book. You need to write this book. Well, what did I say to him? I said, I don't have a good computer. Well, he got me a computer. And then I said, well, I don't like my desk. My desk is too crowded. He bought me a desk and set it up. Well, I need this. I needed the whiteboards. He got me the whiteboards. Literally every excuse I came up with, he answered. And he said, okay, so what's stopping you? Sit down and do it. I've given you everything you need. I want you to do it. And he's just been awesome. I couldn't have done it without him.
So it seems like he takes my philosophy in life, which is if you remove every excuse and obstacle of somebody's way, then the only person in their way is themselves.
Exactly.
So I commend him for that. And I'm glad that he pushed you, because then we wouldn't have this great book and I would have never met you, which I'm very honored to have done so and to be part of your group. Now that 100 Hearts is out there, how do you feel about it? Anything you would have changed, or anything you second guessed about before you released the book that you would no longer change at this point?
It was definitely a learning experience. I've learned so much. Just other indie authors. I've definitely picked a lot of people's brains and gotten a lot and advice on things. And I think this next book's probably going to go a lot smoother for me just because I know what to expect. But I don't think, I wouldn't have changed any of the process. It's been such a great experience. And now that it's done, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like a weight's been lifted off my chest. It's like that thing that's been following me around my whole life. And I got it out. I finally, it's out of my system. I did this. And now it's like, I can do this. I can do this. I can write this second book. Like the first book was just full of so much self-doubt and criticism and that imposter syndrome everybody talks about. And now that I've done it and I've got it out there, it's so validating that I know I can do book 2, and I know I can do it just as well as the first time, if not better. So a lot of confidence building from that experience.
Well, I hope that those of us as part of your group has added to that confidence. It is an excellent book. It is the book 1. So when can we expect book 2?
I am hoping to have it ready to be published by December. I've given myself a timeline, and I'm trying to stick by it. So no excuses. I'm going to do this. It's happening.
Now, you can answer this without spoiling the book. Is book 2 going to be a continuation? Are we going to see some of the same characters? Or are we going to have different characters?
There's definitely going to be all the same characters from the first book, and then new ones.
Well, that's going to be a lot of fun to look forward to. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to see what you come up with. So is there anything that you would like to say to your fans and your readers out there here at the closing?
Oh my gosh. Thank you all so much for taking a chance on my book and reading it and supporting me and just being awesome. All of you guys are so awesome. And it definitely, the reaction is making me just want to keep giving more to you guys and give you my best just because you guys.
And the other question I should ask too, we know that you're on Amazon. Is there any other book publisher that your book is in, or any other book publisher that you would like people to know they can pick it up at specifically?
No, not yet, but I'm working on that.
It's always a slow process. Always a slow process. Right. That does make this question. I know you're taking baby steps, but something to think about. Have you considered audiobooks?
Yes. So, my husband really wants, he likes that idea a lot. A lot of people that have read it or want to read it. And he said, is it available in audio? Because I prefer audio to physical or ebooks. And I know at some point I'm definitely going to do that. I'm hoping as the second book comes out and everything gets more successful, because pretty much all the money I'm making off this first book, I'm turning around and putting it into the second. As an indie author, you really don't make a lot. So what I make, I'm turning around and investing in the second book. So I hope as things expand and get bigger and better, that I will be able to do that for both books in the future.
Well, I will say this is to think about. I know a lot of people do ask for ARCs in audio. One of the reasons is because of what I do. So I am a kind of a manager for 15 different stores for my company. So I'm always in my car. So for 8 hours in the day, I'm driving, don't have really time to read. So I usually pop on a podcast on an audiobook. So for a lot of your fans out there, they could be in the same boat I'm in. They really want to read your book, may not have time through the week, but we always have a lot of time to listen in the car. So just some food for thought for you right there.
Yep.
All right. So anything else that you'd like to say before we go?
Nope. I think you covered everything.
Well, Sarah, I am thrilled and I'm honored, and it's been my pleasure to have you on the show. 100 Hearts is definitely a great book. I'm glad that I met you, and I wish you nothing but the best going forward. When 100 Hearts Book 2 comes out, or whatever you decide to title it, you're always welcome to come back on the show, and we can have another conversation about that one. How's that sound?
Oh, I'd love that. You've been great, David. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
No problem, Sarah. Thank you for coming. We totally appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, you heard it here. That was the wonderful Sara J. Rader. Her book, 100 Hearts, Book 1, Always Hunt Me, Duet 1, can be found on Amazon. Hey, she's not asking for a ton of money for that book either. For what it is, it should cost more than $4.99, $4.99. Go ahead, pick yourself up a copy. Let's give Sarah some support. And be sure to review her book. As an independent author, she lives and dies by your reviews. All right, guys, I also want to point out, keep in mind that my podcast on my website is also friendly to deaf people. If you have a deaf person who wants to listen to this episode, we do have it fully transcribed right below the audio. So make sure you let everybody know who you may have in your life that is deaf. They can totally take part in True Crime and Authors. So that does it. Once again, thank you, Sara J. Rader, for being a guest on the show this month. Also, guys, remember, be safe, stay cool, and always remember that this is the show that brings two passions together as one. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Authors. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. On Facebook at True Crime and Authors. On Twitter at Authors True. On YouTube and TikTok at True Crime and Authors. And email at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Dazzling_Ray from Fiverr. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild from Fiverr. And I'm the voice guy, your imaging guy from Fiverr. See you next time on True Crime and Authors.